hits during what the ministry claims to be fighting with Tuareg rebels in Mali. It comes after Moscow's Africa Corps paramilitary unit was forced to withdraw from the town of Kidal following attacks by Tuareg rebels and their jihadist allies. The two groups joined forces over the weekend against the ruling junta and its Russian paramilitary backers, and carried out a string of attacks on junta positions, including near the capital. The country's defense minister, Saido Kamara, viewed as an architect behind the junta's pivot to Moscow, was killed in the fighting. On Wednesday, a spokesperson told reporters that Tuareg rebels want Russian forces to withdraw from, quote, all of Mali.
Welcome to This Week in Africa. Crisis in Mali, Defense Minister unalived. Africa Corps points their fingers at Ukraine and the West as the reason for the attacks. We are going to talk about this story and others. There's been some serious news coming out of South Africa as well around what we've been calling Afrophobia, many call it xenophobia. So we'll have a nuanced discussion on that. And if we have time, we'll talk about Ghana rejecting the US deal and Saudi Arabia and the Dangote refinery in Nigeria. So without further ado, let's do some introductions before we get into the stories. And I will turn it over to you, Gloria, for your intro before we get in.
Yes, my name is Gloria. I am the founder of Diaspora Station, where we try to bring Africa and its diaspora together through news, culture, you name it. But I want to spend this time to do a shout out to the one and only Joe Hatagwa, whose birthday is tomorrow. I bet you thought I didn't know, Joe. Joe's birthday is tomorrow, y'all. Make noise, ring the alarm, sound the bells. This man is so important for the continent. The things Joe has done. And if you don't know Joe, and I know Joe, I know, but please allow me. If you don't know Joe, we see Joe doing what he does with his platforms, but I have had the privilege, the honor of my life of knowing Joe for over a year now. And there are conversations we have even behind the scenes. This is a man who is deeply, deeply passionate about Africa. When it's something to do with the continent, anything, wherever there's a group of Africa that needs attention, he prioritizes those stories. Joe has been such an instrument as far as even in my own career, in my analyzing of issues. This is a man who actually is one of the most emotionally intelligent people I know. I have never told you this, but he's somebody who, like, things don't, I mean, it would take a lot to rattle Joe. I've never seen Joe rattled. He knows how to maintain under pressure, just always so positive and very intelligent. Well, I mean, we all know this, but these are conversations. I mean, there are conversations we have that I'm like, wow. So I've learned so much from Joe. This was a man who just discovered me randomly. I was like, come do this show. And it's just been just such an honor. And I can't thank you enough. Thank you for all you do. I say, everybody, go buy his t-shirts. This one he has on. Please remove your jacket. Thank you. Thank you. Model. Yeah. Wish I had mine to rock to.
Since today's story is about what's happening in Mali, you can see the shirt. So this is available on the site. It's available on shop and it's available on the website. Check the description. It's all there. So thank you. Thank you.
African.com. Go there now. Buy 20, 30, 40 t-shirts, send them to people you know. I think we definitely need to celebrate this man. Joe, I'm so proud of you. Thank you and happy birthday.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And for all who don't know, and if you're wondering, I am turning 42 this year. Maybe shocking and surprising to some, but yes, that is the case. But thank you, Gloria. I really appreciate that. Thank you for the birthday wishes. And of course, as Gloria mentioned, I am Joe Hatagwa. I am the founder and CEO of Authentic African Media. We bridge the gap between those living on the continent and those living in the diaspora, and we help people visit, move, and invest in Africa. We also do live streams to tell you about the news of the day to ensure that people are aware of what is happening on the continent and in the diaspora. And so that if you're deciding to visit, move, or invest in Africa, you know about the locations in which you are looking to visit, move, or invest in. So we always think it's important to know. I know you're joking, Jada. There's no way. Okay, and yes, I am LeBron's age. Yes, we were both born in 1984. If you're doing the math, yes,
he has LeBron money.
Yeah, I do not. I do not. Nowhere near. Nowhere near. But no, I look, I appreciate the birthday wishes, and it's a very, very interesting week. I just got back from a conference. I was traveling for work. And in those conversations, surprisingly, a few people brought up to me what was happening in Mali. There were some folks who know that I have this platform, and even though my day job has nothing to do with the continent currently, it will soon. One of the things that is interesting to me is how people come to me often about these kinds of stories, even if they don't follow the platform. And so I thought it made sense to talk about this because it was, number one, Mali's defense minister. So this is a high-ranking official. The Africa Corps, which has some backing by Russia, also has pointed the fingers at who they suspect has done this. Look, we've reported on this in the past that at one point in time, Ukraine had given intelligence to a paramilitary group that did end up unaliving some soldiers from Mali at one point in time about a year and a half ago. And the Ukraine actually themselves admitted to giving that insight and that information. So that's not speculation, that is just fact. And so in this case, the blame is put squarely on that group and others. And so we're going to get into it today because this is there have been some attacks all over the country of Mali. And this is the reason, or part of the reason, why the military takeover happened in the first place, because the people wanted solutions to things like this. And so we want to talk about what's happening, and we want to make sure you guys are up to speed. And then, of course, we'll go down to South Africa and talk about what's happening in South Africa as well, because that's another important story. And we want to talk about solutions that are in place today, who the focus should be on, and what is actually happening. So before we get into the next story, I want to give you a little bit more context, right? So obviously, as mentioned in the video you saw at the opening, Russia voices support for Mali amid the escalating violence, as the Africa Corps claimed, of course, that they stopped the coup attempt. And this is not just an ordinary coup attempt. This was a large-scale attempt. So there were, as I mentioned, bombings and unalivings around the country. As also mentioned in the opening and in the thumbnail, you saw that the defense minister was unalived in a car bombing. So very critical time right now. There seems to be a slowdown in some of the attacks, but it was a large, wide-scale attack. So, or a large-scale, widespread attack. So we are going to play a video here and give you a little bit more context before we give you some more commentary on the other side.
Hello, and thank you for joining us. The war in Mali has shifted from the desert battlefield to a high-stakes narrative war. Russia is breaking its silence, standing in solidarity with Mali, while Russia's Africa Corps claims that they helped to thwart a massive foreign-backed coup attempt. Just hours ago, Russia issued a statement urging for peace and stability in Mali after unprecedented attacks from the Tuareg rebels and Janum terrorists. They also say that rebels are regrouping for fresh attacks, as the situation on the ground still remains volatile. However, reports suggest that the Kremlin spokesperson refused to answer if Russia's paramilitary group, Africa Corps, would be able to bring the situation under control. But on the ground, Africa Corps have reportedly claimed that its troops have disrupted what it calls a large-scale coup attempt targeting the Malian state. The group claims between 10,000 and 12,000 fighters launched coordinated attacks on the 25th of April. They say key targets included the presidential palace in Bamako, military barracks, and a munitions depot in Kati. Africa Corps insists that they have neutralized over 1,000 fighters and have secured all these strategic locations. The Russian paramilitary group is now also extending the blame. They are reportedly alleging the direct involvement of Ukrainian mercenaries and Western intelligence agencies in the strike.
So obviously a critical moment in, the forward progress of Mali. 10 to 15,000 coordinated troops, 1,000 have been, obtained and or stopped. Your thoughts on what is happening there?
Yeah, so I think it's important for us to first know how Russia even got to Mali in the first place. Mali has been in political turmoil since 2012 when Tuareg rebels and jihadist groups seized control of the north of Mali. And after that, they had a military coup. Then another coup in 2021, as we know, which brought Colonel Assimi Goïta into power. Goïta made a decision that changed practically the geopolitical map of West Africa. He expelled French forces, which France had stationed over 4,000 troops in the Sahel region as part of Operation Barkhane. That was supposed to be its counter-terrorism mission. So Goïta told them to leave. And then, we saw Malians come out in the streets to celebrate that. And into that vacuum comes Russia, specifically the Wagner Group. The Wagner Group is the Russian private military company that was led by Yevgeny Prigozhin. As we know, Prigozhin got unalived in a crash, but that Wagner Group arrived in Mali in 2021. And, that was basically refreshing, I guess, for Pan-Africanists and Malians to see, or people throughout the AES who felt that this was a liberating force that had nothing to do with that had no colonial ties. So the optics were actually really powerful because France, the former colonial ruler, was out, and here comes a country helping or defending Mali's sovereignty and partnering with Mali, as it has done even with the AES. The bottom line, this is really unfortunate, and we've seen a ton of videos. I've been in collaborations on some, I'm sure you have too, Joe, with sovereign media. We've had videos that have actually shown, people speaking to the fact that there are suspicions around what could have led to all of this and what is, be it directly or indirectly, France specifically, gets named every now and then, allegedly, to have, to be part of what's going on behind the scenes. But one thing I will commend the AES for is that regardless of everything going on with them, one thing they've done is to remain focused on their mission to liberate the people. And at the end of the day, we're all going to keep supporting and, I guess, defending you where we can. But yeah, this does look really fishy, but we'll definitely keep our eyes on this one.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot to cover here. I think the main thing to keep in mind is, this was 10 to 15,000 people. That is not a small group, right? This is a coordinated attack. And since Assimi Goïta has taken over the country, there has been a slowdown and a sometimes stoppage to some of these types of terrorist attacks, right? You saw that because of the coordinated efforts with the other countries in the AES, with Niger and Burkina Faso, all working together on intelligence gathering and communicating and talking through defense strategy, etc. They have all had seen success. And one of the things that gets talked about very little is that Mali has been under sanctions from the US for many years. And over the last couple of years, Mali had been, and I have to check the most up-to-date numbers, one of the fastest growing economies in the world, even under that kind of sanctions, which is very difficult to do. The sanctions are not punitive just to the leadership of a country, but really mostly to the people of a country. And Mali has been able, with relationships with the Far East and also their two neighboring countries in Burkina Faso and Niger, to begin to step away from the challenges that come from being in that kind of a situation where you have sanctions put against you for doing, any business in your country. And for those who are not aware, sanctions really just say that a country of power, like the United States, says that no one else who is their allies should and can do business with the country of Mali, right? To a degree, that's really what it means. And so Mali had to get creative and continue to thrive in the face of that. Now, when it comes to an attack like this, as you said, there are a lot of questions as to who was involved, right? As you saw, Africa Corps they've determined that it is the Ukraine, and they've also determined that other Western allies are likely involved. And as you stated, people have been pointing the finger at France. Obviously, we are awaiting more details and confirmation on that, so that we can share that as we get the details on whether or not that is the case. But that is who they believe has done this. And as I mentioned before, in the past, the Ukraine has actually admitted to giving intelligence to some of these paramilitary groups that unalived many Malian soldiers a couple of years back. So it is not out of the realm of possibility. We hope that they're able to, keep these attacks under, control, and to stop them and to eventually eliminate the threat. But we're talking about a large number of soldiers. 10 to 15,000 people, as mentioned, is not a small group. And Mali is not a small country, right? So there are a lot of places for these people to hide, to strategize, and to come back again. And as that video stated, it looks like they are planning another attack. So, we're going to continue to watch this and make sure that we keep you all posted. As of right now, it seems that Assimi Goïta is alive and well. He actually visited some of the victims at a hospital after the attack. And I'm going to play a video where we see him out and, showing that he is going to continue to support his people and continue to fight. So I will play this video and we'll have some commentary on the other side.
Mali's military leader, Assimi Goïta.
Sorry about that. Let me share this tab again. I think I stopped sharing, didn't I? Long morning already. Give me 1 second. Let me bring it back up. There we go.
Mali's military leader, Assimi Goïta, visited the wounded in last weekend's attack, according to the presidency. Among the first pictures of him since last weekend's attack against the ruling junta, the military regime had earlier stated that hundreds of people were injured during the attack, while also claiming that more than 200 militants were killed in the process. However, they did not specify the number of Malian soldiers killed. Goïta, who has not appeared in public since large-scale jihadist separatist attack at the weekend, also met the Russian ambassador to his country. The attack also led to the death of the Malian Minister of Defense. Meanwhile, the Jnim jihadis who claim responsibility to the attack threatened to impose a blockade on the approaches to the Malian capital Bamako 3 days after they, together with the Tuareg rebels, carried out an unprecedented attack on strategic positions held by the ruling junta.
Yes. So on that note, just one more thing, because that what was mentioned in that video was the jihadists threatening to impose a blockade on Bamako, which is a major city in country. So I'll play a little bit from that video, and then we'll have some commentary on these two videos afterwards.
In a video released Tuesday, Jenim spokesperson Bina Diarra declared that all routes into Bamako are now blocked, allowing only those already inside the capital to leave. He warned that anyone attempting to enter would face consequences, adding that the same restrictions apply to the nearby garrison town of Kati. Effective today, access to Bamako is completely closed. Leaving the city is not a problem, but entering it is strictly prohibited until further notice. Anyone who insists on taking the roads leading to Bamako and Kati will face the consequences, including the risk of death.
So, to be clear, this is the capital of Burkina Faso, right? So, of Mali. So, this is a very strategic position. And if this is true, this is imposing a serious challenge for, Assimi Goïta and his troops. Your thoughts on these two stories?
Yeah, I do want to say that Sadio Kamara, the defense minister who got unalived, was not just a defense minister. He was an ideological architect of Mali switching away from France towards Russia. So he was that major link between Kremlin and the junta, and he actually made the relationship work on a practical level every single day. So him being unalived was not a random thing. And that's why if you see the security being upped that way, they're not just trying to raise false alarm. It's real. I mean, think about what it takes for you to unalive a sitting defense minister. Just think about that, on a coordinated attack on a capital city. That requires a lot of intelligence. That requires knowing his location. That requires knowing his movements, his security arrangements. It requires planning at a level that goes far beyond a spontaneous rebel offensive. So Mali choosing to defend itself the way it's doing or prevent, anything further, I absolutely understand it.
Yeah, absolutely. And if this military blockade, or this blockade, I should say, by the jihadists actually does happen, that does change a lot of things, right? Because now, obviously where Assimi Goïta operates out of has to be somewhere else, or they have to take back the city, which requires, war level fighting, right? And so we'll keep a close eye on this. It's obviously a very, very important story. The next piece of this I want to, get to, and you alluded to this, was the increase in security in the region by the leaders of Niger and Burkina Faso. So Ibrahim Traoré has tightened security in the capital of Ouagadougou in the wake of the coordinated attacks in Mali. And those what their security sources have told the African news outlets. So we'll play a video and give you some more context and have some more commentary on the other side.
Of an operation on Tuesday, the Security Ministry announced the launch of an operation aimed at strengthening security across the country and called for vigilance. It also called on people to report any suspicious behavior, particularly around sensitive infrastructure such as military barracks, airports, administrative buildings, and other installations of national importance. The measures come after unprecedented militant and Tuareg rebel attacks in Mali, which, like Burkina Faso and their Sahel ally Niger, is also run by the military.
All right, so your thoughts, any additional thoughts on the increased security measures in Burkina Faso and Niger as well?
Oh yeah, very necessary. They all need to increase it because Traoré, for instance, as we know, is a major face when it comes to, I think really throughout African history, when you're talking about faces of African liberation and people who have really fought for African sovereignty, Traoré would be among them. And that's why it's so important to people who believe in the Pan-African movement, because they know that Traoré, because a lot of our legends are gone. A lot of people who did fight for our liberation, either got unalived or they have since passed on. And he is now like the living legend we have. So of course, eyes would be on him, and it only makes sense, not only for his own security, obviously for the security of his citizens. So it's necessary and very expected, and I highly encourage it.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, obviously, this is a very coordinated attack, and it was, like we said, 10 to 15,000 troops. We don't know how many people in Burkina Faso right now they are working in coordination with to do something similar. As we know, there have been many reports of attempts on Ibrahim Traore's life, and at least coup attempts. Some people say as many as 20 in the past couple of years since he's been in power. And so that number is expected to continue to grow. And, what we're seeing is over time, they work to build these strategies, right? I mean, these guys have all come into power with about 3 years or more ago, and these attacks are happening now. And so, there are a lot of questions as to how these attacks can happen. To your point, obviously, there are people on the inside who have knowledge and who are sharing that knowledge, and or there is surveillance technology in country listening to conversations, devices, following people's movements. You can't help but to think about the fact that there are military bases not too far from this region where drones are, where drone bases are, and where there is no ability for the country hosting these bases to determine what happens at those bases and where those drones fly. So, or what kind of surveillance is being done in neighboring countries to where these military bases are from folks outside of the continent. Think about where those places might be and who those countries might be who have bases there, but think about how it becomes easier to share intelligence when you're in a neighboring country. So we will leave it at that. We will continue to make sure that you all are aware of the updates of what's happening with this story. And we want to make sure that, we are responsible in our communication, right? So we're always going to let you know what they are saying, and we will always confirm what we have been made aware of to be true. So as of right now, this is what's coming from these parties, and we will confirm if we become aware of these things in the future as to who exactly is responsible. So now moving on to South Africa. I mean, many of you might be aware of the Afrophobic/xenophobic events over the last months, and specifically over this last week, where a Ghanaian national was berated in the street in South Africa, and we had seen people turned away from emergency rooms. We have seen people turned away from hospitals by citizens, and it is a nuanced conversation. I think one of the things that I got a phone call this past week from a friend of mine who has a South African friend, who we spoke a little bit about the fact that two things can be true, right? There is growing dissatisfaction with quality of life in South Africa among South Africans. I think there is also concern about the kinds of illicit activity happening by foreign nationals. I think one of the things that is a major challenge in South Africa is the focus on African foreign nationals as opposed to others. And we're going to talk about a story in a moment of Uganda and what Uganda has done from, folks from Asia in Uganda. But what you're seeing is South Africans focus on, at least in terms of what is getting amplified, focus on other Africans. And you don't see any of the stories that are amplified about focus on anyone outside of the continent of Africa who are involved in some of the same things. And also you don't see a lot of conversation about the leadership in the country and changes that need to be made there. Most of the time you see it taken out on individuals, which is what you see very much so in countries like the United States as well, right? When the United States talks about migrants, you find many folks who are dissatisfied with quality of life, blaming migrants, and not necessarily organizations, governments, etc. So with that, we have a video from Gloria on a little bit of history and a nuanced part of the conversation. So we'll play this video and then we will have some commentary on the other side.
We don't want you here. We want you to fix your countries.
We fought for this country. You were not present. You take over what belongs to us.
Come closer. Tanzania hosted some African National Congress and Pan-African Congress members. Ordinary Tanzanians even donated money. Zambia served as one of the main headquarters of the ANC for over 20 years, and they hosted thousands of South African freedom seekers. They were targeted and endured severe economic hardship, but they didn't budge. This was why Zambia was one of the first countries Mandela visited after his release. Angola not only showed support, it joined forces with Cuba and the ANC in the Battle of Cuito Cuanavale. That moment contributed to Namibia's independence. And speaking of Namibia, Namibian liberation movements proved that the system that had kept the people down for so long could be defeated. South Africa too would be free 4 years later. Mozambique allowed Black South Africans to organize and operate. Their infrastructure got destroyed, economy was weakened, and there was a heavy human cost. Zimbabwe campaigned for international economic sanctions and the global isolation of the South African government. It offered safety, offices, and support. They also paid for it with their infrastructure and economy. Botswana also gave refuge, and even when their civilians were eliminated, they stood firm anyway. Lesotho and Eswatini sheltered activists amid constant threat. Algeria helped with training. Matter of fact, Mandela himself trained there and studied their strategies. Egypt used its voice and influence by broadcasting what was going on to the world. Ethiopia gave Mandela a passport that allowed him to travel, organize, and build international support. Libya provided funding, even helping to train the freedom seekers. Ghana, under Kwame Nkrumah, imposed a total ban on South African exports and provided scholarships. Guinea, under Sekou offered sanctuary to liberation leaders. Nigeria funded the movement and pushed what was happening onto the global stage. Civil servants and citizens contributed from their salaries. Students donated what they could, and musicians amplified the cause. That's how serious it was. There are others that I don't even have time to mention, so please mention any country I missed in the comments. When you say fix your country, just remember many African countries paused fixing their countries to help fix yours. And to those saying that only those who aren't there legally or those who have done bad things are the ones being targeted, well, how do you reconcile these?
We are also coming for the likes of Pitandoro. It's a TV presenter in South Africa. Zimbabwe, they don't even have a TV station there. All their people, they are all here. They are musicians, the likes of Nadia Nakai. We don't want Nadia Nakai to represent us. Likes of Shasha, they are here speaking local languages, tending to be South Africans. No sense of pride.
To hire South Africans because of these reasons.
Follow, turn on post notifications, and comment down.
So very deep video with a lot of historical context. Before we get into the content of the video, I want to ask what made you decide to do this video, and then we get into the content, because obviously it is important to talk about what you covered in this video.
Yeah. I want to begin by saying, first of all, thank you for playing that video. I guess I have an opportunity to respond because it's been a mix of all kinds of reactions. I have a large following of South Africans, especially on TikTok, because, you know, in our conversations about what Afrikaners have been doing in SA, which we have talked about repeatedly, and some of those videos have gone viral, and, you know, we've received a lot of love as a result. But when it comes to this conversation, all of a sudden we're spreading lies and propaganda. The reason I put that story out was because, you know, history, as you know, Joe, I love history. I love to You can't really argue with facts. And unfortunately, there are still some South Africans in my comments who insist that what we're putting out are lies and propaganda. We're all watching the videos and we're seeing what is going on. And these historical facts were actually documented even by the ANC, which sadly, some South Africans seem to want to dismiss right now. And I understand, there are things going on with the government right now, but I've had some even say the ANC owes you, not South Africa. And I had to ask one, I'm sorry, so who brought your country to liberation? But they said, no, it was not the ANC, it was the people. And of course, people started going back and forth. It's just so sad. But it's in the archives. You've had Desmond Tutu reference it. You've had Mandela reference it. It's in your Truth and Reconciliation Committee reports. It's everywhere. So the facts are not being presented in a way to tarnish you or to lie against you. But the reason, to answer your question directly, the reason I put it out was because I like to look at things through a historical lens. And when you say people should go fix their country, I also want to, in response to that, I want you to know, nowhere are we endorsing illegal immigration. Nowhere have we ever said criminals should get away with what they're doing to South Africa. I think this is a very important part of the conversation that we need to make you aware of. In fact, I want you, let's follow the law. We will campaign for those people to be deported, to do time for doing bad things in your country. So there's no way, and I know Joe is definitely the same way, we have no interest in endorsing criminality of any kind. I want to make it very clear. And I'm really terribly, deeply affected and concerned about how this has gotten to this level. But I also want to make it clear that it's not every single foreigner in your country that is doing bad things. I understand that there are people, some Nigerians, some people from other countries that are doing things that are illegal. I get that. But what we've said time and time again, get your law enforcement officers to work. Get your border controls tightened. The bridge between Zimbabwe and South Africa that's allowing people come in illegally, work needs to be done there. All we're saying is that there are channels that should be followed, because this is not a good look for SA. Remove us from it. And honestly, Joe, I have felt Afrophobia, even when I've shared South African stories. Sometimes they are well received. There's certain conversations I would have that would be well received. The conversation around Tyler, I remember the reactions I got from South Africans, and there was nothing I said in that video that was intended to offend. So there were some, not all. There were some who, it's always that thing of leave us alone, stay away from our story, stay away from our history. Even before we got to this point, I have received love, but I've also received a lot of vitriol. I'm being very honest. So the point we're all making now, please understand the intention is not to hurt you. This is not even a concern that's everybody cannot be telling you the same thing and you insist that we should stay out of your business. Well, you made it our business too, because now you're attacking not just Nigerians, now it's all Black non-South Africans that you're targeting. That's why I added that part to the video. It's not even only those doing things illegally. Now you just have a problem with any Black non-South African because you feel like we need to get out so your country can be fixed. It's a very, very heartbreaking thing that is going on. My heart is broken in so many ways. And if you think that I'm coming for you, I'm not trying to come for you, but I cannot lie to you. We cannot be here speaking up against the injustice being done to our people, and then you're doing things like that to your own people. Yes, we are all the same. And I get it, we're from different countries and all that. By the end of the day, you're attacking your own. And legal, illegal, it's just a lot. It's just a lot. And it's very sad.
Yeah. And do you have any anything else you want to mention about the history? I mean, you mentioned it's in the archives, it's in Truth and Reconciliation. Anything from that video that people disputed? I saw some comments there, but anything you want to mention?
Well, I mean, obviously everything has not been received well the videos have been well received. Oh, that video was well received largely, but sure. Some South Africans disputing the fact they just dismissed the entire thing actually as propaganda and as a lie. Yes, we don't want you, go fix your country. We don't care. Leave us alone. But I want to add this. that, because I did mention that there are countries that I didn't even get a chance to mention. In fact, those countries are coming for me like, why didn't you mention Liberia, Congo, Uganda, you know, that Somalia, that countries, Cuba. We referenced Cuba, but Cuba did a lot. Jamaicans are even in the comments saying, hey, would Jamaica also, you know, but, you know, in this video, I referenced African countries that stood by South Africa because it's Africans that are not South Africans that are being affected. That's why, not to dismiss the other countries from outside the continent. But I think in essence, the best way to summarize it is to say the continent stood for SA. So when you want to kick everyone out, again, you have every right to call out illegal immigrants and people that you're pointing at buildings and complaining. Call the police. You have the information. That's where there's a failure. If you're saying they're giving things to your children and they're harming and hurting your children, we don't want that. Call the law enforcement. They're the ones failing you. But to be taking it out on all immigrants or all foreigners, that is what you call Afrophobia. That is what you call xenophobia, because now you've made people have a problem largely with people that are Black that are not from your continent, or rather from your country. It feels like all non-Blacks, or rather all Blacks that are not South African, are now a problem, and you don't want them anywhere in South Africa.
Yeah, and so I was having this conversation, and I can appreciate the history, the knowledge, and the understanding, because I do think it's important not only to have the history, but to also speak to all of what's happening today. I think so. A couple of things. The conversation that I had with this woman was specifically around the fact that there are many South Africans dissatisfied with certain neighborhoods changing, and not changing in terms of the demographic, but changing in terms of crime and increased crime. And one of the things that you have in South Africa that there's like a couple of things converging is obviously firearms more readily available there than most other countries. So you have that kind of violent crime that happens. You also have a contingency of non-Africans who come in and who are not penalized and or removed from country. And many times they tend to be the leaders of these kinds of rings. We're talking about scam rings, we're talking about human trafficking rings, and we'll talk about Uganda in a moment. But these things happen frequently by non-Africans. What ends up happening, though, is the blame goes to Africans. So that's one piece. The other piece, which I alluded to earlier, was the fact that, you know, what people are focused on more than the non-Africans that are in country that are perpetrating some of these things is also political class, not the political class, sorry, the economic classes, and the difference between those who live really well in country and continue to suppress through many different means and ways to, you know, hoard their wealth, grow their wealth, and also to not also have the ability for those who don't have access. And I do think that it's important to maybe turn your eyes to that group. And, you know, I don't know if the result in this kind of way makes the most sense, but I think just making sure that you're aware as people of what is happening, because I think it's a very nuanced conversation. And we do plan to have a conversation with people from different countries who have very deep and detailed backgrounds and understandings of history and today's context, people on the ground in these different countries and dealing with immigration. And we do want to have this conversation with that group, but we wanted to make sure we address this particular story because it is so viral right now. Everyone is talking about it. And so it's important that we talk about it as well. Now, there was a question about this, right? When people are scared about crime and living in poverty scarcity, they're easier to divide and exploit. This is why they have to throw economic freedom fighters like Malema in prison to avoid class unity. That's exactly the point I was making, very eloquently put, but that is true. So shout out to Pittsburgh Dude 87. As we talked about previously, Malema will potentially serve, is it a 5 or 6-year sentence?
And they gave him 5.
5-year sentence for shooting a firearm at an EFF rally a few years back. And yeah, so that I think is something to think about. And it's interesting to me that, you know, EFF gained, was it less than 15% of the vote in the last election? If I'm not mistaken, it was I don't even know what the number is at this point because I'm going from memory, but it was a very small percentage of the vote. And it's interesting that the people who voted in country, or at least, you know, if everyone says it's free and fair elections, decided to go for a political party that, of course, is the political party of Nelson Mandela, but does look a lot different than what most people expected and view them as, right? And, you know, there are a lot of questions and conversations about that. We don't have enough time to get into that today, and we'll have some conversations in the future about that. Now, I do want to get to a couple of other stories because there's specifically South Africa does vow to crack down on xenophobic or Afrophobic attacks after that Ghana protest. And they've pledged to take decisive action against perpetrators of violence targeting foreign nationals, of course, after Ghana formally protested over incidents involving its citizens. So we'll play a video and have some commentary on the other side.
Foreign nationals, including Ghanaians, following growing concern over violent incidents shared on social media, officials said Friday. Tensions escalated after protesters summoned South Africa's envoy, calling for urgent intervention to prevent further violence. The move followed reports of a Ghanaian national being harassed in KwaZulu-Natal and told to leave the country. The South African Police Ministry has warned that anyone involved in attacks or incitement will be identified, arrested, and prosecuted. Foreign Minister Ronald Lamola also denounced the incidents, stressing that violence against migrants has no place in a democratic society.
So your thoughts on this, and, you know, whether or not this will actually happen, but what are your thoughts on the idea that they will be cracking down on this and you know, following up with people in this particular incident and others?
Yeah, well, Joe, please permit me to digress quickly. I want to also reference Ghana. You know, there are things going on with Ghana and Nigeria. I'm sure you've seen the videos. Nigerians must go. And, you know, it takes the history. Ghana must go, Nigeria must go. It's so messy. And it's all very sad. And this is why, you know, what's going on in South Africa, we're very concerned because of the pattern. You're one of the big brothers on the continent. You know, the pattern that's now being set. To answer this person here who said maybe y'all shouldn't be disrespectful when going to other people's countries, I hear you. Nobody should disrespect other people, especially when, you know, you're disrespecting the citizens of that country. But please do not paint everyone as being disrespectful when they go to other people's countries. You might think it's largely the case, but please, let's not even do that. But back to the conversation around the measures that are being proposed, being taken. At the end of the day, Joe, I am for any government that is able to crack down on, you know, things that are not okay. And I do appreciate also people who do anything that is unconstitutional, even though you're saying you're fighting for your country and you're being patriotic. If you do something, because it is against the law, to mob justice or jungle justice it's not constitutional. So as long as things are being done properly, you follow the channel, you follow the protocol, let your government, who you hired, you know, or rather who you voted into power, they're supposed to handle these things. So I do think, I'm not sure I believe that anything has been, unfortunately, throughout the continent, we haven't had governments really stand up. And I think governments have the responsibility. Well, I know governments do have the responsibility of ensuring that these things do not continue. Every single government, the Nigerian government needs to speak. You know what I mean? The South African government needs to speak. The Ghanaian government has been very vocal, has actually been the most vocal of all the governments, but a lot of governments are largely quiet, including the South African government, where these things are happening. So I don't know if I expect much from the government, because to begin with, had they been responsive, we wouldn't all be where we are now having these conversations. But things need to be done. The law needs to be enforced. Crime needs, I mean, come on. And to, just to qualify that, it's not only foreigners. In fact, some people will tell you it's a 2% statistic. There's only 2% of foreigners that go in there to commit crime. Or rather, 2% of the crime happening in South Africa is by foreigners. That is largely not, non-foreigners doing these things. I'm not here to argue that fact, but I'm just saying, again, we'll keep our eyes out, and hopefully we have some resolution, but the governments have a large role to play in fixing these problems.
Yes, I mean, a lot was said there, and I think the main thing I will say is I support any efforts to stop Afrophobia, xenophobia, right? That's what I would say. And, useful efforts, ones that work, and deterrence from future, situations like the one that we saw in this video. In the interest of time, there were a couple of stories that I'll just, mention quickly, but, speaking at a global inequality dialogue in Johannesburg, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa issued a stark warning regarding the global inequity emergency, citing a report from the Extraordinary Committee of Independent Experts. Ramaphosa highlighted the staggering divide where the richest 1% captured 41% of new wealth between 2000 and 2024, while the bottom half just saw 1%. The president called for a radical overhaul of international financial and political systems, including UN Security Council, better serve developing nations. Now, I will mention, which people mention all the time when these conversations are had, that Cyril Ramaphosa is top 3 wealthiest presidents on the continent of Africa. I think Gloria and I early on in us working on these live streams together, I shared with her all of his financial interests, and I think it might have been news. And if you could just Google Ramaphosa and his financial interests, I think that is one of the things that people are calling out in these conversations, right? I think, I, for one, I'm not a person who has an issue with presidents who have built a life before coming into office. I think where people run into challenges is when you have that much interest and people don't feel like they're seeing any changes in their day-to-day lives. And it seems as though presidents on the continent are further enriching themselves and not having money go back to the people. And that's why the AES has been applauded so much, because that is exactly what they're doing. They are nationalizing resources and making sure that the money flows back into the country. Now, with that, I'm not going to play that video. I'm going to move on to the next story, because there is a story that I want to show where this actually has the impact that we were looking for, particularly here in South Africa, but we're seeing it in Uganda. So we'll play this video and we'll have some commentary on the other side quickly.
On illegal migration, authorities have arrested dozens of foreigners since Monday. The latest operation targeted a group of people living in the north of the country and another group living in a closed compound in the capital.
These people were found without anything at all. No passport, no ID, nothing. They were only with their computers and that place, that apartment place was self-contained. It had a restaurant in there. It had a pool table in there. It had all sorts of things. And these people were restricted. They wouldn't move out. They wouldn't allow entry. No.
Okay, so I'll leave it there just in the interest of time. Quickly, your thoughts on Uganda expelling all that entire group there, which obviously were not Africans. Right. So you notice that these are foreign nationals from outside of the continent who are perpetrating human trafficking. He later goes on to talk about suspected fraud, credit card scams, etc. So your thoughts there?
Yeah, interesting juxtaposition there, Joe. But yeah, we see. So this proves 2 things. Number one, shout out to Uganda tackling that. they could have all been African foreigners, and I would have said, yay, that is what we want to see. South Africa, imagine if the government was doing things like this. Even you, if you want to go into South Africa and commit crime, you would think twice. Do you know what I mean? So these are the kinds of actions we expect to see, instead of it, reducing to where citizens are having to go in the streets to commit this, very atrocious acts. Now, the other side of it is, you see the fact that these are non-African foreigners. Please, South Africans, don't be offended by what I'm about to say, but we do know that sometimes some Africans, some of us could assume, oh, just because this person is non-Black, oh, maybe they mean well, maybe they have good intentions, and then you overlook them. You even go as far as going to business owners that are non-Black foreigners to tell them not to hire people that are, Black non-South Africans. So it's a very interesting time. So what you're doing is you're overlooking the fact that there could be these bad guys that are actually non-Black, that are from outside your country, that are doing bad things in your country, but you've just assumed that the Black non-South African is your enemy. That's what I find to be very ironic with this video you played, Joe.
Absolutely, yeah, and I would say, obviously great work to them for finding this, this group and expelling them, and we hope that others follow suit. So last thing is that two things that we didn't get a chance to get to. I wish we could, just because we ran out of time. But Ghana has pulled out of talks on a multi-year U.S. aid deal after allegedly the U.S. demanded access to citizens' personal data. Any quick thoughts on Ghana pulling out of that deal with the U.S. for aid?
Can you imagine the governments that do give access to data of their citizens because they want this partnership so desperately with the West? But Ghana has said no. When will the rest of the continent stand up for Africa in this way? Can you imagine the data that the West has access to because our governments are so desperate? Well, thank you, Ghana, and shout out to you.
And lastly, any thoughts on Saudi Arabia's ambitions to gain traction in West Asia? Saudi Arabia's ambassador hosting Dangote to deepen trade ties and to gain some traction with oil in Nigeria amidst all of the issues happening with this war in Iran.
I mean, because of the power that we have largely on the continent, we have talked about opportunities that have come out of this whole thing. I mean, there's no surprise there. I don't have enough time to go into the nuances and, deeply into this conversation, but I'm not surprised that, there are countries that are looking to, everybody will always look to Africa. Africa is where it's at, but that's just yet another proof of what we've been saying. I just hope that our leaders can see this, but go on.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And so, yes, I do think that, there were more that we wanted to go through today and really get into those two last stories more deeply. But because we ran out of time, we will just leave it with those headlines. You guys can do the research on your own. We'll be back next Thursday with another edition of This Week in Africa, where we go through the top headlines of the day. I want to thank you guys all for watching. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe to at The Gloria AO and at Diaspora Station. Make sure you also do the same for at Authentic African. Slightly different on every platform, but you'll find it when looking for it. You just type in Authentic African, you'll see the logo. Of course, you had something else?
It's Joe's birthday. For those who missed it, Joe is turning, how old are you? 22 tomorrow. Make sure you... Joe's like, I'm turning 42. I'm proud of that. But shout out to Joe. Go to AuthenticAfrican.com. That t-shirt is on the website. Go on, stalk him, stalk this man. He's going to be giving us the location for the party that's going to be happening tomorrow.
What are you talking about? There's no party happening tomorrow. But you can buy this shirt on the website. So you go to AuthenticAfrican.com and go down to the bottom of the page where it says merch. You can click on that or click shop, but go down there where it says merch and just there's a scrolling number of t-shirts. And so since in honor of the conversation we're having today on what is happening in Mali, I wanted to wear this shirt and make sure that you guys were aware that it is available. It does speak to, on the back of the shirt, which I'm not going to take the sweater off and show you, it does give a little bit of history. So if you're wearing this shirt and people are interested, they can learn and you can show your support for the AES as well. So yeah, appreciate it. If that's what you want to do for my birthday, I would appreciate that. If you can, feel free. Understandably, if you cannot, these are rough times for all. With that, I want to thank you all for watching, and we will see you guys all on the next live stream. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Oh, Jada says the shea butter too.
Shea butter.
Jada purchased the shea butter as well. It's not available right now, actually, Jada. You bought some of the last batch, but there will be more coming soon, so keep going back to the site. Right now, it's just the merch that's available. But thank you guys for watching. We'll see you guys all in the next video. Bye, guys.